welcome back to the Seven Figure Music School podcast. I'm Daniel. This is Nate. And today we are talking about another topic that is important as we are coming to the end of the fall rush season. Yet another pertinent topic and something that, once again, surprisingly, we have not talked about before, or at least not talked about in the depth that we are going to today. And Nate, I'm very curious because BMF does this really well. This was an episode that was your idea, and I know you've got a lot of passion around it. It's something that BMF does very, very well. Maybe you could introduce the episode first today. Usually I'm the one talking for too long at the beginning. What are we talking about today? Like, what's the big idea before we get into the nitty-gritty?
Yeah, the big idea is just you got one chance to make a first impression. Right? It's the beginning of the school year, and we want to do that first impression right. So I call it like onboarding both new families and returning families. At Brooklyn Music Factory, we do a 10-month after school year, and then we do a summer camp songwriting program.
Yes.
So in September, we're onboarding both the new and the returning families. So that's what we're covering, how to do it really thoughtfully, to know why you're doing it, and then to make sure you've got some concrete actions that you can take.
Yeah, and I really like how you put that, because we have been referring to this episode prior to recording it as, that's the onboarding episode. But the idea of making a good first impression, that's like the sexy version of it, you know?
Totally.
Now, speaking of sexy, let's talk about something that sounds really, really good to me. And that is the idea of, at the end of this school year, having higher enrollment, better relations with your staff, better school culture, a clear grip on your financials and your metrics. I wonder what could cause that to happen. Well, let me tell you, Nate and I have been helping school owners for the past 3 years grow their multi-teacher schools. Okay. We've released like 175 something pod episodes. This is 177, I think. We've coached both in groups and one-on-one. And our intent has always been very simple: help you run a fun and profitable and mission-driven program, right? And so we took it to the next level last year by introducing the Founders Forum, and we are weeks away from the new class starting. We have taken feedback and the results that the schools have gotten over the past year in the last version of it, and we've created a sharper, even more focused version of the forum for the 2025-2026 school year. And I just have people ask themselves 3 questions. Have you been listening to us talk for years about systems that need to be in place and you still have not found the time to build or implement them? Okay, ask yourself that. Are you overwhelmed by all the possible actions you can take? Like, I need to do this. I need to do that. I've got a task list with 122 things on it. Like, you have all these things. You're overwhelmed by it, but you need a very clear strategic plan that lets you focus on just a couple things this school year. So at the end of the school year, you have a lot of these problems that you're thinking about all the time just solved. Like, they disappear when you get strategic and get big picture. So are you overwhelmed is really the question I'm asking. And 3, are you wondering why you continue to have no cash every summer, yet you don't have a budget, forecast, or easy to read profit and loss statement? So if you answered yes to any of those, then you're honestly probably kind of psyched out right now, and you're just never gonna you're just never gonna find the time to get these business tasks done. And most owners just do that. They just psych themselves out for their entire career. And so we have a solution for this. It is the Founders Forum. Okay. If you are a founder and you're ready to take steps to build a sustainable growth and profit plan, and if now is the time to solve the problem, I just want you to go to growyourmusicstudio.com/forum, fill out a very, very simple application, and Nate or I will talk to you about growing your school. We had smaller schools work with us last year. We had schools that were knocking on the door of $100,000 a month that joined us last year. We do not discriminate. There is something for everyone here, no matter what growth stage you're at. And with this new version, we are pairing up schools that are in a very helpful way by growth stage and also by strengths and weaknesses. So, and of course, obviously, we're moderating all of this. But now is the time to take this seriously. You're past summer. You've had fall enrollment. Now it's into the week in, week out grind of running the school over the school year. And you could have a very different experience of your school after just one school year by working with us in the forum. So go to growyourmusicstudio.com/forum and apply to work with us this school year. We have a ton of experience and we're ready to help you. Okay, Nate. We will onboard a lot of new schools this fall to the forum. Let's talk about onboarding students to the Brooklyn Music Factory enrollment list and how you onboard these families. So
yeah,
let's hear about it.
Okay, let's just dive straight in. First of all, when we think about making that first impression and bringing families on, Daniel, I sort of want to ensure a few different things. The first is that everyone, whether you're a new family or you're a veteran family, whether you're a beginning student or you're an advanced student, that you feel like 100% welcome in our community, right? So there's not like cliques within Brooklyn Music Factory. There aren't a bunch of advanced kids back in the corner and then some young beginners in the front, and they never cross paths. It's everybody's a part of this growing community. Number two, I want all the parents to just have a very clear sense of the musician's journey from the outset. So if it's a brand new parent or if it's a returning parent, I always want them to be thinking like, what stage of growth is my child in the musician's journey? So that's number two. So we use this term musician journey all the time. We've done episodes on the musician journey report, etc. But the point is they need to actually have a concept of what that means for their child. And then the third goal is that both the students and the parents know exactly how to access all the lesson materials we use, like from the songwriter's journey to the jam tracks to the big music games that their kids playing in the lesson. We want to make sure they're playing those games at home. And we want to make sure that the parents know exactly where to find the lesson reports the teachers prepare every single week for the students in the classes. So those are the three goals. Everybody feels welcome and a part of our community. Parents all have a very clear sense of their journey that their child's going to take over the next 7 to 10 years or in what they're already in the middle of. And then third, we want to make sure that all the students and the parents can quickly and easily find all the materials necessary to have just a great success in the lesson. So those are sort of the what?
Well, I was going to ask you, I can see why you have the first two in there. I can also kind of imagine why the third one's in there, but I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more on that third one. Like knowing how to access the things like that seems so mundane when you compare it to have them understand the journey for 7 to 10 years. Like that's like an epic adventure they're on. And then the third one is like, oh yeah, know how to get the jam tracks. Why is that so important to you? There's got to be a story there.
Yeah. So every parent loves the idea of their child being in some sort of creative endeavor or just part of something, especially when it's outside the parents' purview of what they consider to be their expertise, right? So you could be great at actually getting this family to the door of Brooklyn Music Factory. You could get great at getting the student into the room, into the community room, but then the parents sort of don't have any idea what to do next once they're there. And they sort of kind of always just trust that the teacher is going to take over from that point forward. But the reality is that it does take a village to grow a lifelong musician. And that's, our intent at BMF, Daniel, is that, this 6-year-old that comes in is going to be playing when they're 60, right? That's the intent. And so we want the parents to understand exactly what the student just did, why they're so psyched when they come out of their piano lesson. And we want them to understand the tools that were actually used in the lesson. So big music games is foundational to it. The songwriter's journey is foundational to it. But labels, like you can show the big music games logo, but it doesn't mean anything to a mom, right? They don't have any idea what it is. The kid might say, like, I played a super fun game where I recognize, major triads, minor triads, etc. But that doesn't actually mean anything to the mom. But it begins to start to mean something to them if they actually see the child experiencing something back at home. So in the traditional lesson, right, we might have had a book that they walked home with. Like even in Piano Express, which is like so great, it's gamified, it's technology heavy, and you want the student to log in. You and I both know that actually getting the student to be set up at home to log in is it takes effort, right? It takes effort to get the parent to be like, wait, I have to do what? Don't you just have a book I can use? And so, Piano Express is great at that. You're like, we do have a book, but for them to get the full benefit, it's great if they can actually use the tool we use in class.
There's actually a big fancy business term for this. It's called product activation, where you activate your customer inside of the product. And I kind of knew intuitively that third one, that's what it was. But I just wanted to kind of hear you elaborate on it a little bit more, because people will buy something and then feel intimidated by the product itself. This was actually a problem with the iPhone when it first rolled out. Here was this device that there was a lot of demand for, but then people were finding it confusing to use because it was so innovative. And so there were things that the design team engineered into the early versions of the iPhone. I still have my iPhone from like 2008 in a basket over there. It's kind of like a keepsake or something. The point is that just they wanted to activate users inside of the product so that they didn't return it, or they wanted to keep using it. So that's exactly what you're doing there. I think that's smart. And I think the listeners can think about how people can use their studio. What can you do to make someone feel more at home with your studio, or, the idea of practice, specific curriculums you use, specific rituals that you have. Like, I would remind parents every year of what the drop-off procedure was, pick up and drop-off procedure. I would sometimes have to do it mid-year if too many people weren't doing it correctly. That's an activation issue.
Yes.
That contributes to retention to some degree. So, good stuff, Nate.
This reminds me, actually, and we're going to get into the weeds on these 3 goals and exactly, what actions we're taking at Brooklyn Music Factory this fall. But it reminds me, before we had BMF Connect, before we had Big Music Games as an app and all these things, I had created like essentially an activation video. It was just me at home with this sort of the perfect play space for your child at home. And I just walked them through, like, here's where the piano is in our home. It's not in a bedroom, it's by the kitchen where they can see you making dinner while they play. Here are the different toys we have around our piano to ensure that, everything from like a, little like sand timer to the books we were using. At that time, we were using Music Tree. And so it was very early years of BMF, but it's totally what you're describing. It was like my activation video. It was like, here's how to ensure that at home is as fun as in school. Okay, so let's dive into goal number 1, shall we? Just building community and how we intend to do that as part of the, onboarding process. So the building community, obviously it's in our tagline. It's inspire musicians, build community. We view Brooklyn Music Factory as a community center, not a music school. It's a place that we really want to encourage families, whether they're enrolled at BMF or not, to be a part of. And so they could be coming to all kinds of different community events, et cetera. So build community is essential for us. And I sort of couple it with this other core value of ours called discover everyone's story, which is essentially, this sort of put it simply, it's like we want everyone at BMF to feel like they have a story to share. It's in the songwriting process. It's in the collaborative process of making music. So why is this so important to us? Because, our fundamental purpose is to train students to feel like they can collaborate and create with others. That's the whole point. That's like being in a band is at its core a collaborative process, right? It's the reason why I love making music, is because it's always being done with somebody else. We're sort of co-creating. So, it's like, put simply, that's why building community is so important and why it's part of our onboarding process, is because we're just accelerating the timeline within which a student begins to trust that they can be collaborative in the classroom with other students, right? So that's the why behind it. It's not just a build community as a tagline, like, isn't that cool? Build community, and parents might keep their students at Brooklyn Music Factory longer, right? I mean, it's so much more than that. It's baked into exactly why we exist, because we're trying to create these collaborative songwriters that want to work with other musicians in a group, right? So that's the community piece. Now, that's the why behind it. And basically, with every one of these goals, Daniel, it's like, we were talking about this before recording the pod. It's not enough as an owner to be like, hey, we're going to make a great first impression. We're going to show everyone how important community is. We're going to, show everyone what the musician's journey is. And we're going to remind people that there's games they can play at home. It's not enough to do that, right? You actually have to have concrete actions that you're measuring, that you're taking across the entire school, that you believe will result in those goals, right? We have, like, the activation point you were making. Dude, it's like, you don't have any idea if they're activated, but I promise you, like, Duolingo knows exactly what actions I take on the app after I download it. And they're measuring every action I take. And they're like, whoa, Nate Shaw didn't actually complete the activation yet. We need to start pinging Nate with some reminders, because otherwise he's not going to get the full value out of this thing we've built. He's downloaded Duolingo, but he's not activated yet. He's only played one level, right?
Yeah.
So concrete actions is where I go next. First, know the why behind what you're choosing to do as part of your onboarding, making that first impression, and then come up with at least one concrete action that you believe will result in it. So let me just start with the community one, and then I'm gonna see what you think, Daniel, so far about this and just what it brings to mind for you. But we have 3 specific actions that we are putting in place at Brooklyn Music Factory to try to build stronger community from the outset with both new and returning families. The first one is, this is new to us. We've never actually done this. We are implementing like a name tag lanyard system. So every student, every staff member, every teacher is going to have one. And for the first 4 weeks of the school year, and then for the 4 weeks of February, mid-year, we're all going to wear those. So, and why? Because basically, we want to ensure that the one thing that is not getting between me and you connecting is your name.
Reducing friction.
Yeah, you're just exactly. Like, I don't want to, everybody's been at a networking event, at a cocktail party, at a dinner party, at a whatever, and you feel that sense of like, oh, what's my first move? But if I look at you and I see your name tag, like at the conference I was just at, I can be like, Daniel Patterson, tell me a little bit about Grow. What do you guys do there? Right? It at least gives me a chance to connect. Right. So that's number one. We're introducing that. And we're going to come up with, we're going to have some cool, awesome wall where they all live in the off season. And I promise you, a bunch of kids will still want to wear them. It's like a backstage pass vibe, And so the next action we're going to take is that in the first 4 weeks, we're going to invite every student without fail to join the drum circle or the jam session or the live big music games in the community room. And listeners, if you've been listening a long time, you've heard me talk a ton about that. But it's one thing to have sessions going and to have drum circles going and to have games going. It's another thing to specifically invite every single student. Right? That's a concrete action. That's a different thing there. And then the third one is, we're going to ask teachers to introduce a student to another student at least once a day. Just one, let's say they're teaching 7 private lessons that afternoon. One of those 7, they just take a moment as they're bringing them back out to the community room and they're like, hey, Dylan, have you met Dagger yet? Dagger, Dylan's a great pianist, just started here. Dagger's been playing bass here for 7 years. That's it. That's all you got to do. Introduce them. So those are the 3 community actions we're taking.
When you introduce those students, what do you see as the long-term effect of that? Because I can't imagine, like just introducing someone doesn't make them best friends or whatever. Like, what do you see as the effect, and how do you know that effect is happening?
There's 2 principles at work. The first, which I find to be the most valuable, is you're training your teachers to see beyond their own roster. And that part is essential in what we do.
Oh, my word. We could talk a whole episode about that. Keep going.
Yeah, dig it. So number 1 is you're helping your teachers start to see beyond the 7 students they taught that day, et cetera, or their entire roster. The second thing is that kids in general really struggle, especially depending on the age range they're in, really struggle with any kind of social interaction. When they're younger, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4 to 6, they're really good at co-playing.
Yeah.
Right? They'll exist together in a space, but they have a real hard time actually being aware and identifying that there's another kid with them. They just exist there, right?
Sure.
So step number 1 is to just be like, hey, by the way, we need you to see that there's another musician here. It's just a momentary, just notice that these people exist. They're here. Because eventually, dude, in 3 or 4 or 5 years, you're going to be in a band with them. You're going to be making a record with them. You're going to be writing original music with them. It might not even be in 4 years. It might be in 2 years in jam band or something like that. So the second piece is just helping the student begin to increase their awareness. And I don't expect them next week, Daniel, to be like, oh, Dagger, I remember you from last week.
Yeah.
Right? I don't expect that at all. But what I do expect is that they sort of take note that there are other students in the building.
Yeah. Okay. I like that.
Okay. Great question, though. Any other thoughts on the community piece before we go to the musician's journey?
I think everything that you said there, just to tie it back to the overall goal, is one of the goals you have, other than just community for the sake of it, is just that retention piece. And you're building a lattice work of relationships, and it's more difficult to leave that lattice work, or it's more difficult to leave the community when the lattice work is there. And so I subtly see what's going on beneath the surface. There's authenticity behind it, but there's also practicality to what's going to happen as a result of that authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just the observation I'd make.
Yeah, no, I love that. You're absolutely right. And you'll see that you'll see retention go through the roof as these kids at BMF age into a jam band 101 that they really want to stay a part of, that then becomes a rock, write, and record. Once they all of a sudden they're in this, what we call an advanced band, but they're still just a group of 9-year-olds, they really identify. It's like being on their soccer team. They've made some friends. They identify with that team, and the likelihood that they're going to leave the team, leave the band, it's very unlikely once they start to really identify with that crew, So let's get on to the musician's journey. So the second goal, as I mentioned, was to ensure that parents and caregivers, because there's a lot of caregivers dropping the kids off, and they need to know too, because they're the messengers. They're going back home to share with the parents what actually happened, right? So you got parents, you got caregivers. They're coming. We want to ensure that they actually know what we mean when we say musician's journey, because that's just it's a cool term, and I know we have. There's a lot of schools that are now sending out musician's journey reports, et cetera, at their school, because we've done some cool episodes on it. But it needs to be very real and it needs to be a concrete story that the parent can understand. And so why is it so important that they understand is because if you want a parent to be patient enough to move their child through multiple stages of growth in anything in life, but especially in the arts, in a music lesson, then you need to be very clear that there are multiple stages and that there are like these very clear sort of benchmarks that happen over the journey, and that these parents need to understand that, oh, in the first 2 years, it's very much, for example, in mini keys, it's very much about exploring and finding something that an instrument that they're really attracted to, that they want to put their hands on, that they are asking to play. The same can hold true in those first couple of years of Jam Band 101. So once a parent starts understanding, like, oh, it's not just a music lesson, this stage of growth is all about the student getting their hands on all these different toys and understanding what they are, and then like essentially sharing with both the teacher and their parents that they're really interested in being a singer, or they really want to play piano, or they really love the, Lug guitar and they want to play guitar. Like once a parent starts realizing like, oh, those first few years of the musician's journey at Brooklyn Music Factory, we know that it's been a success when this happens, then they're much more likely to stick with you. Right? It's not enough to just, right? The whole idea is like you're developing this trusting relationship where you're like, I have only the best intentions for your child. And if they move like this through the journey in a very systematic and patient way, the likelihood that they'll keep making music 10 years from now goes way up. So let me just explain. So, does that help with retention? Hell yeah, it does, Daniel. Of course it does. Because you're like, I have a plan for you, right? Again, like, let me go back to Duolingo. Like when you open the app up, you see all these other levels that are locked that you can't unlock yet because you haven't done the initial stages of the plan, right? But by the mere fact that I can see like, oh, I have another, 15 levels on this round before I get to go on to the next thing, I'm like, oh, they have a plan for me. Let me just try to get through these first things so that I can unlock that next stage. And that's what the musician's journey is about. It's about unlocking the next stage of growth for their child, So we have some concrete actions that we try to do to help parents understand this. And it's not fancy, right? It's pretty basic, and it'll make sense to everybody. And everyone can do a version of this that they design for their own school that makes sense. But the first thing is in our community room, we have a Jumbotron. We're always, we're putting big music games up on the big screen, all that kind of thing. But what we're going to do this fall is we're going to show the journey, right? It's not enough to tell the parents about it. You have to actually show them. So we're going to be showing like graphics and little short videos that have the journey of a student moving from a mini keys to a rock, write, and record. And in our case, we've been doing this for 15 years, so we can actually take real students that have moved through the journey.
I was going to ask if you went as far as to highlight one student. That is such a smart tactic. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna. The hope is to do 2 or 3 different students. And so we have a few in mind right now, and essentially, we're digging through the trove of our Google photos to find these amazing shots of them. When they were 6 in a club keyboard class, and now they're 15, and they're they're just so. It's
kind of like it's kind of like at the graduation party when the parent has like their school picture from every year,
Yeah, exactly the same idea.
But imagine the studio that cares about those students so much that the studio can actually make that, And for some studios, like you could begin to plan this in advance. Like this is a long-term plan. You could specifically make sure that you're planning out the kinds of shots you're trying to get of every student in a performance or a recital or a jam session and band. And then, like, just imagine a student graduating at age 18, having gone through your program, and then you doing like a little interview with them and intercutting shots of them like playing in their first recital when they were 7 years old. Like amazing.
Let me give you a little hot tip on that we've been experimenting with at the factory, Daniel. We've been using the facial recognition feature in Google Photos now. So basically, your student comes to your school. It's the first week or two. You ensure that you get a good shot of every student. There's just someone in your waiting room or in your community room that's taking a quick shot of the student and uploading it to the central Google Drive, your photo album, right? And then we actually have someone who just tags every one of the photos. It's not even it's a VA. It's not even someone at the school. They just have they're able to tag them because we have a system where we ask parents to upload a photo of their child into a form, and so we know they can look at the names of every child. They just put first name, last initial. That's it. But then you can do a search. It's amazing, dude. Ben is so good at this. Whenever it's a staff member's birthday at BMF, he always puts up a photo album, and all he does is use facial. Google just pulls all the photos of Jessica, and he puts it up, and there's 112 photos of Jessica in our Slack channel from the last 8 years or whatever. It's incredible. So it's a super cool idea. What you're saying is totally possible, and technology, of course, is making our life easier and easier every year to do this kind of thing. So the actions we're doing are really concrete. Number one, we're putting something up on the community room, pictures of students that have completed the journey, a simple graphic showing just how many years students spend in each stage of growth, like in the mini keys and Jam Band 101, then in the songwriter's journey, just making it so obvious so a parent can see this journey for their child. And then we have some testimonials from both students and parents where they're describing each stage in a positive growth language, like back to Andy Tinio, someone who started in a mini keys, and now he's just starting at the LaGuardia, the Arts High School in New York City, and he's in an incredible advanced band at BMF now. But he will talk about his experience in mini keys. The dude's 14 now, but he can remember back. I mean, these kids they remember their experiences. You just have to ask them. And it's really fun to hear how they frame it, And by the way, like we talked about in a recent episode, parents and students will always frame the musician's journey better than you would. They will actually use language that the parent will understand when they're trying to gauge what the journey is, right?
Got it.
So that's what I mean by that. It's sort of marketing 101, but use the parent's language of how they're perceiving the journey and use that in describing it rather than your own, whatever your fancy, music education terminology might be, right? So the only other action that we're going to do is we have a full color pamphlet that just outlines the musician's journey. We're going to make sure that we hand that to every family. It doesn't matter if they're old or if they're new. It does not hurt for a returning family to come back and remember where they are in their journey at your school. So that's goal number 2 of ensuring that parents, caregivers really understand what the journey is. Those are the 2 concrete actions we're doing. Can I go on to goal number 3 and give a couple of actions there?
I would love you to do that. I kind of stole your thunder a little bit when I got super curious about it at the beginning of the episode, but I know you have more to say around this point. So let's hear it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just going to give you just a little bit more. But again, goal number 3, we talked at length at the beginning, but it's just making sure that parents are able to find all of the materials that you're using in the class and be able to use them and access them at home. So for us, it's our songwriter's journey curriculum, which includes video jams and audio jam tracks, and then obviously lesson templates and things like that, but also big music games. So We want to know that they're playing those at home and they can find the lesson reports that the teachers are sending. So again, the why behind this is straightforward. Like, parents can't actually help their child become independent learners and self-motivated musicians if they can't actually access the materials. They can't start by pointing their child and their student in the right direction, right? So they can have at-home play just like they had at BMF. So we have software that we've developed called BMF Connect that just is our learning management system. The parents can log into it. They access everything through that, big music games, all the lesson materials. But we have to actually get parents to log into BMF Connect. It's like what we were talking about. We have to activate them. And you'd think, like, of course a parent, and we even charge them. They pay $9.95 a month just for BMF Connect. That's our lesson materials fee every month. And it comes with tons of resources and all the big music games and everything, but still they're being charged, and yet they still need their hand held and shown exactly how to log in, how to bookmark, how to put we show them, we sit down with them in the community room and we bookmark the web app on their phone so that they can just open that up and play at home. Parents will literally bring in their iPad. So one of the actions we do is we help them make sure that they can log in on that iPad and use that as their at-home learning tool. So the concrete actions for that are, we just are literally setting up a table in the community room, which is our BMF Connect table. And that's a place to just make sure parents and caregivers all know how to log in and access all the lesson materials. And then the second thing we're doing is teachers are handing out a big music game of the week card. So it's a physical thing. It's just like, here's the game we're playing this week. We played Beat Detective, and whatever, Jenny is on level 4 of Beat Detective. By the way, I've put your username and login on the card for you too. So it's super easy for you to log in and start playing at home tonight. So concrete actions are, we set up a table in the community room that's all about lesson materials. So anyone can always come and ask for help and get help. And number 2, we give something physical that we have the teachers hand out for the first 4 weeks. They're not handing it out every single week of the year, but for those first 4 weeks, they're handing this card out. Those are concrete actions. By the way, last thing I'll say about these concrete actions, Daniel, ping it back to you, is your actions need to be something you can measure. Did you actually set up the BMF Connect table and put someone on it? Did you invest in someone being there for those 3 prime hours every afternoon and help parents? Did teachers actually hand out those big music games cards to all their students? Yes or no? All you have to do is ask the teachers. Did you hand them out? Oh, I forgot to yesterday. Okay, be sure you do tomorrow, right? Actions are something you can measure. Those are key. You can, of course, measure the results, how many families are actually logging in to the software. Again, Duolingo definitely knows how many of their recent downloads turned into daily active users. They're measuring all of that. We can measure that with our software, but what you can control are those actions, those lead measures on the front end, whether you're actually inspiring parents to log in. So those are our 3 goals for onboarding. And those are the concrete actions that we're intending to do at BMF to hopefully get the outcome we want.
What strikes me about all these is, after now having heard all of them, is just some of these are just very simple. But it is often the simple things that people struggle to put into place. It's not hard to follow up with leads. Most people just don't have a plan for their week, and so they don't block out a half hour to send emails, texts, and make phone calls. I, every week, had on my calendar a scheduled time where I followed up with all my leads for my piano studio. Same with this. It's not hard to do some of these things. It's about being open to ingenuity, to think up ideas, to like, oh, here's a problem. What are all the creative ways we could solve that? come up with a list, pick one that you think is the best, and then systematize it. This gets even more difficult when you're a school owner and you have multiple problems that you're trying to deal with every week. Eventually, you've got to get to a place where you have an executor on your staff. You have someone on your staff that is in charge of operationalizing things. Even if it's just a simple assistant who can operationalize small stuff, at least operationalize stuff that's small so that you can operationalize bigger things. This is how you scale. It's this constant, efficient use of resources to make choices that improve things so that you get more resources that you can then allocate. And it's just this constant growth of leads, of money, of retention, of good staff, because you're putting these systems into place. And a lot of times they're simple. It's just there's not a plan to do it.